Well, good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here today to have a conversation with my good friend Bruno Basso. Bruno is the John Hanna Distinguished Professor in the Department of Earth and Environmental Sciences and Plant, Soil, and Microbial Sciences at MSU. And before we really get into the heart of the conversation, I want to give a little bit of background on Bruno. For those of you in our listening audience who are historians of Michigan State University, John Hanna was probably the most impactful president we have had to date at Michigan State University. His vision and leadership was transformational, not only for the university, but made a tremendous impact on the lives of people in the state of Michigan in agriculture and natural resources and other disciplines across the country and across the globe. And so I can't think of anyone within our research portfolio that's more deserving of that title than Bruno. He's an accomplished scientist, recognized across the globe. And most importantly, the work he does, the goal of that is to make a difference for agriculture, our farmers, for local communities, and make the world, make the planet a better place. So, Bruno, welcome. Looking forward to the conversation.
Hello, George. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
All right. So, Bruno, as I travel the countryside in the US, talking to people vested in agriculture, farmers, commodity group representatives, etc., the topic of regenerative agriculture is coming up more and more and more. It's still a relatively new area in terms of adoption and practice, but people on the supply side are more interested. Our farmers are committed to um, taking care of the planet, and they want to develop systems that are more resilient. And so regenerative agriculture gets a lot of attention. Can you start out by telling us a little bit about your research and how it's relevant to the topic of regenerative agriculture?
Certainly. Um, George, like I said, it's truly a pleasure for me to talk with you this morning, and also because, as you mentioned, regenerative agriculture is really at the core of my research, and I feel that I bring an angle that is, I guess it could be identified as a little bit complex, but the system is complex. Regenerative agriculture is complex. I want to say by, complexity in my research is the integration of technologies like modeling, remote sensing, the digital technologies, and artificial intelligence are all tools that when they come together, the whole is much greater than the sum of the part. And with those technologies, there's just tools, and the key is to know how to use it. But ultimately, the goal is to provide quantitative, so farmers can associate with some numbers and understanding that their decision is backed up by science, and it helps them make more informed decision, because that's what it takes to go from principle. We all know they don't, in theory, that you protect the soil, you do all these really good things that on a long term, but when you come to a specific condition, each field is different. And so we really cannot think like with the vision of Michigan State being, pioneer land grant university and the center to be really one of the most critical hub on regenerative agriculture, that we could think to help only farmers close to Michigan State, or, so we have to design this type of research in a scalable way that helps the farmers close to East Lansing, as far as all the way to the thumb or beyond, because we work, as you know, regionally, nationally, and globally. So quantitative information to help more informed decision that would translate in two things. This is very important. Profitability. If farmers cannot stay in business, it's complicated. It's complicated in terms that they will not obviously listen. At the same time, we want to be able to protect resources, natural resources for the community. But not only, we want to help them be able to continue to farm down the road. That's where another piece of the complexity comes in. How do you basically play with these trade-offs? And it's not linear. So sometimes profitability comes at the price of the environment. Other times it's the other way around. And so it's complex. I'm just privileged to be able to have a large lab that addresses this. And obviously, you didn't mention I'm a proud Spartan because I did my PhD at Michigan State. So,
Exactly.
anyway, a long-winded answer to say how critical regenerative ag is, and unfortunately, the complexity of the system requires the type of research that we really ambitiously try to deliver to farmers.
Yeah, awesome, Bruno. A lot to unpack there. You know, I'm not a young man anymore, but as I think back to when I was growing up as a kid and some of the technologies that are now being incorporated today, autonomous tractors, drones, artificial intelligence. When I was a kid, they were in some ways considered the topic of science fiction. And now they're a reality. But you made a really important point. It's not about the technologies for the sake of the technologies. It's about how you utilize those technologies to help farmers make informed decisions that impact their livelihoods so they can not stay in business and also feed the world. So I really appreciate your comments.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, and you said something else that really resonates with me. Every field is different. And I know you're going to get into that a little bit later in the conversation when we talk about the impact of your work. And I have to confess that I've stolen that line from you on occasion when I've had the pleasure of talking to leaders in agriculture, elected officials about the importance of the work we do, and talk often about your research because it's that type of innovation that can really make a difference for farmers. So, kind of pivoting to the next question, you set the framework well about how your lab uses cutting edge technology and research coupled with on farm decision making. How can this connection between research and practice really help farmers improve productivity while strengthening things like soil health, crop production, environmental outcomes? And can you share an example or two for
For sure.
us?
Sure. As I briefly mentioned, you have to rely on technologies for different reasons, and the technologies that we use, you probably, I mean, you're very familiar, and I had the privilege to be basically shown because of these cool gadgets that we work with. So drones are a big piece, starting from small drones now to really giant mini helicopter that they basically are able to apply fertilizer. But I need to reinforce the point that it doesn't do any good having a drone that is able to precisely apply the amount if you don't know what to do, what amount and where in space. And so again, technology is a catalyst for the science and the innovation that have the ultimate goal of helping farmers, stay in business, produce food. I mean, we're privileged to have the opportunity that people take the risk on our behalf, thinking many times erroneously that, oh, they make money by doing that. They have such a small, margin. And so that's really the pledge that we have to really allow them to continue to stay in business. Drones, computers have gone from punch cards, the first model that my former professor started, Joe Ricci, proud Michigan State professor, the first holder of the Homer Nolan chair that obviously is under the College of Ag, your college, and from punch cards to now we run basically subfield 3 meter resolutions, image analysis daily across the globe. We take advantage of incredible resources in Michigan State, high performance computing center, HPCC. So that has gone into something that, well, like you said, it was like basically movie type of discussion, science fiction. That's all happening. And then the possibility of having machinery that are able to follow what we tell them. So I often make these jokes, we have had self-driving, basically 25 years. Obviously, change of hitting someone in a field much slower than that a car driving in the roads to San Francisco. But they have been truly the breakthrough. I think the possibility of connecting, farmers driving very precisely, not applying inputs overlapping or leaving
Mhm.
strips that they used to. We could see them even from the sky, that there were areas that were not covered because the GPS, I mean, the tractor took a larger curve, like a
Mhm.
turn. So these three pieces, machinery, computer broadly, and I would say geospatial technology broadly, remote sensing, satellite imagery, and drones have this goal of making things visible for farmers and actionable. And I'll tell you a story that when you do so much work behind the scene, we deal with numbers, right? We don't look at every single field looking at, it wouldn't be possible. It's not
Mhm.
scalable. So when you look at these numbers and then all of a sudden you basically create, this profitability map for farmers, that to me has been one of the most important breakthroughs and conversation with them, because some of them say, I wasn't ready to see this. And you will say, well, you have an enterprise, you know all this. Well, they wouldn't possibly basically know at the level of resolution what we
Mhm.
show them, that they're losing, basically money in some parts of the field, making money
Mhm.
in others. But at the same time, they're also impacting water quality and
Mhm.
greenhouse gas emissions.
Mhm.
So making things visible and actionable,
Mhm.
because the visibility shows into, okay, what if we do something? And I know this podcast is listened by really a broad group of people. The what if scenarios, it's really magic, because
Mhm.
it will allow farmers to do things and ask questions before they do it, which you wouldn't possibly in agriculture. Our time frame is several years in the field. So
Right.
field experiments are so critical, but they have been paramount to build models and understand
Mhm.
these mechanisms. But in many places, you can't afford to have field experiments for a long term. And
Mhm.
we're so proud to have the
Mhm.
LTER, the long-term ecological side, the long-term agroecosystem research, which big supporter and the promoter of both projects. And
Mhm.
so you can't afford it. You gotta have a system. You gotta have a system that translates basically
Mhm.
complex results into actionable, and the visibility and the cool maps have go a long way, because farmers take these maps from the fridge,
Mhm.
they put it finally into the tractor. Last year we sent 50,000 prescription maps, prescription like the doctor will give to his
Mhm.
patient, about RX, so knowing what to do. Long, complex system, but visibility with actions to again reach those two goals: profitability while protecting natural resources.
Yeah, Bruno, so many great examples. I mean, I grew up on a farm and work with my father, and I remember, you drive around, you look at their fields. Yeah, this is a good field. This is good dirt. The better term is soil, but this is good dirt. This is not so good dirt. So farmers understand that, but you're really taking that type of analysis to the next level, where within an individual field, an individual 300 acres or 200 acres or whatever it is, you can dissect that further to really understand the value, the productivity. So drill down a little bit deeper in terms of explaining how that works, because it's really a great example of how to have a huge impact on agriculture.
Indeed, indeed. And it's following up what I mentioned about the opportunity of collecting data
Hmm.
at a high resolution through imagery or sensors mounted on the tractor, field experiments. We have learned something which is honestly one of the possibly an important breakthrough in linking science to implementation.
Hmm.
Because each farmers now has the possibility to see their fields on a website,
Hmm.
digital farm that is going to be launched in the next basically beginning of the year, thanks to the support of the climate resilience investment, both by Michigan State and the Department of Agriculture. And they can see zones, subfield areas where they constantly lose money
Hmm.
versus areas that they constantly have high yielding, and the paradox that could potentially even boost some of those yields.
Hmm.
So that resonates a lot with farmers. The problem is that, and you and I have talked this, offline. There is one important aspect to consider that possibly the general audience doesn't know. About 70% of the land in the US is rented.
Hmm.
So when you rent a land, it's very different than renting an apartment because you or a house, you can do an inspection, you like it, you buy a car, you can quantify how many miles the cars have done, you look at the tires. In the fields, you can't poke a hole and decide, how basically the level of carbon and its high spatial variability. So this system really helps farmers understand the level of productivity and is being used by strategically identifying areas where they could invest more inputs, versus removing some of the inputs.
Hmm.
And I know later, I guess, in the conversation, I'd like to touch on the precision conservation approach, where this land gets removed. There was this nice coverage on the New York Times that they came and fact checked all these implementation on farmers, because that's what's really unique about the Basso Lab, converting science into actionable items, for farmers. And so that's a really, really, it's a long bridge to cross, but we having our level of satisfaction.
Yes, so such important work, Bruno. At a time in agriculture where the margins of the difference between revenues and expenses are so small to begin with. And anything we can do to help our farmers reduce input costs, like, not use fertilizer when you don't need it and things like that. That's a huge impact on their bottom line and also has impacts when we talk about the environment and things like that. So very, very, very important work. You and the center work not just with farmers, but also with nonprofit organizations and global companies. Why are these cross-sector partnerships so important for scaling the technologies in regenerative agriculture beyond individual fields or farms?
I value the collaboration with I would say, the public-private partnership or NGOs immensely, because for two reasons. First is you can't solve problem all by yourself. You need to be able to rely on people that can even better communicate the finding of science. Everybody may have their own talent, but so you bring all these opportunities coming again, NGOs and companies. The science is basically backs them up and
Mhm.
allows them to become credible, that they are supported. Science does not have an agenda. We are completely apolitical.
Mhm.
We basically are driven to advance knowledge, transforming lives. These are quotes that you've seen them around, but you gotta have the science and the innovation that other people will resonate with, and they can take it to the next level,
Mhm.
because working with large corporates, it should be seen as an opportunity and not necessarily as something that says, oh, well, we are scientists, we stay within our lane and we don't want to, make the richer richer. That's a totally opposite way, the way I think. I think
Mhm.
they need our support independently, whether it's a state organization, you can't replace science with the professional scientists, people that do that for a living. And
Mm-hmm.
so they do have, basically divisions within that, but they don't have the opportunity to collect this wealth of thinking that Michigan State offers.
Mm-hmm.
It's critical to understand about consistency and credibility when they go to places and it's supported. Again, whether they demand, sustainable sourcing,
Mm-hmm.
the quantification, which is at the core of the Center
Mm-hmm.
for Regenerative Ag.
Mm-hmm.
It's be able to be transparent and you say, you are emitting this much, you are sequestering this much.
Mm-hmm.
Good enough for you that the balance is in favor of
Mm-hmm.
mitigation rather than emitting,
Mm-hmm.
but you got to do that with tools that they're recognized,
Mm-hmm.
not improvised. That's at the core why I value, and I often serve on boards, advisory boards of both companies as well as the corporates in general or NGO, because it's important to make our voice heard and how important science is. I also recognize that scientists have different, I guess, they have different disciplines. So you will go from the basic science,
Mm-hmm.
which obviously worries about identifying, the genes, and that's also critical. The important thing is that eventually we put all these pieces together and we're able to transfer the technology. And that it's systems approach. That's what we do as one sentence. A system approach allows to link genetics, climate, soil management, independently where it comes from, goes into the hands of outreach companies and eventually help farmers, make this decision. So that's basically the vision and the pipeline that I every day try to make it stronger and really solid connection across these enterprises, basically farmers, scientists, institutions, and NGOs and corporates.
Well, Bruno, you made a great case for why we're doing these podcasts and why we're doing these impact stories in general, because it's all about the partnerships. And you described it well. These really are symbiotic partnerships where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And then you achieve the intended benefits for the people that the science is done for, to serve the public, to help make the world a better place, to help feed the world, uh, and so on and so forth. That's why we do what we do. I know that's ultimately what gets you up in the morning, gets you excited about your job. That's what gets me excited about
Exactly.
my job too. And we're just trying to really do a better job telling that story about how science is really making an difference and having a real life impact. And sometimes it's a huge number of studies and information that all comes together that leads to the new tool, the new program, the new discovery that makes a difference. It's all important, but it's up to us to tell that story. And I know you're committed to that. I see you, you're very visible in the media. I love seeing you on TV. I love seeing your picture around campus and in airports because that's about telling the story and the impact, which is so critical, and it's why we do what we do. So I appreciate you for that.
Thank you so much indeed.
Yeah, so you mentioned the concept of precision agriculture intermixed with conservation practices, and that really is kind of fundamental to regenerative agriculture. And I know you've done some great work in that area. Kind of connect the dots for us and talk a little bit more about that, the impact of that work, how it relates to regenerative principles, how it helps farmers, how it helps the environment in the process.
Very good indeed. Yes, I mean, people may think of, the use of tools, digital tools or precision agriculture, not necessarily connected to what it may be identifying as a regenerative system, the integration of, some level of management practices, integration with,
Hmm.
where possible, with livestock and so on. But in the end, I'll take you back to the differences. Every field is different.
Hmm.
Every field will drive the economics in a different ways. And so identifying what works
Hmm.
and where it works, it's basically goes back to seeing things from above. And so be able to understand the level of yields. We can't just prescribe, okay, regenerative ag is no tillage cover crop, good, check the box. That's
Hmm.
far from it.
Right.
That's totally far from it. It's
Right.
just really understanding what are the type of plants and where within your farm you could basically implement the best possible outcomes.
Right.
This complex analysis that we talked about, the trade-off, profitability, and the environment, starting with crop rotations, be able to include alternative crops, be able to keep the soil covered all the time. There are places, both some in Michigan and other places, where the establishment of the cover crops may be more challenging. And
Yep.
farmers are very smart and saying, hey, that didn't work for me. I
Hmm.
got just three little leaves coming out, nothing else. So understanding, did they do the right thing? Did they plant it at the right time? Could we use different mixes? Could we just not necessarily advise an expensive practice and move on into obviously keeping residues on the ground and be able, because the ultimate goal is building soil health. And
Hmm.
that's the basis of that principle is carbon. Carbon is life, soil is life, biology, trying to basically balance a lot more the chemistry with the biology. And
Hmm.
so those are the things that you cannot do one at a time. You cannot isolate. You need a system that builds and improves over time, as we've been doing over the last basically 30 years of running models and integrating with geospatial technologies. So precision agriculture, in the end, it tells you what works best and where,
Okay.
starting with one of the most critical variable, which is feeding the plants, nutrients, right?
Hmm.
So nitrogen, if there is an area, and I always make these examples, and farmers basically nod and shake their head. If you have an area that has been producing 120, 130 bushel corn, which is really on the low side, break
Hmm.
even is close to 180 now. And
Hmm.
so you're running a loss. And I show you with your own data or scalable with remote sensing that you're basically losing about $200 an acre for the last 15 years and you keep doing it. That's not the right approach. But so for the first time, we put this evidence in the hands of the farmers and say, you're losing money here, you're making money here. To go to eventually almost a paradox. Don't grow corn on these areas. You
Hmm.
gotta build the system back. You have a shallow soils, you have shadings from trees that don't allow, you
Hmm.
got wildlife impact, and so all this converting into pollinators, alternative crops that will build perennial system that you will be rewarded. So I
Hmm.
make the case agriculture provides ecosystem services. Number one ecosystem service is yield. The others, you can make money by selling ecosystem services. And that's where the world is going. I mean, understanding that corporate would like to see biodiversity being brought back into the agriculture because we have intensified and extensified the system. We
Hmm.
continue to grow on areas that they shouldn't necessarily be grown with crops with high input. You
Hmm.
cannot spend $750 to produce a $500 crop. That's pretty simple math. And if we push this, then something is wrong. It says, where did you go to school? That does not work in the math
Hmm.
equation. And so be able to put them in evidence and be able to show them that that's the best, farmers are resonating.
Hmm.
There is complexity in the adoption, as you
Hmm.
well know, that you got the early adopter. Those are the ones they call you. Then you have the ones that you talk in front of them and they follow out of the rooms. Then you have the ones that they basically see the neighbor and say, I'm going to do. First, they think the neighbor is crazy. And then they say, want to try on some fields, like the little kids trying the veggie in the beginning
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
growing over time. That's all we eat now. So that sort of stuff is very important to be able to put farmers in front of the evidence that they can make profit by using alternative approaches, providing lower amount of inputs where the plant does not respond. You can't do trial and error on this. So the possibility of running multiple rates of fertilizer on a computer, and
Mhm.
you and I have talked about bringing this almost dream, a Michigan digital twin. So
Mhm.
plants can grow in the computer while they're grown in the field. And here you can do all the possible testing, and then only
Mhm.
the one that works gets
Mhm.
outside. So it's really kind of a dream coming true, and it's a slowly but surely coming to fruition and adoptions.
Yeah, great stuff, Bruno. I love what you said too about farmers telling farmers that practices work. That's the key to adoption.
Yeah.
And that's what we strive for, and that's an important role that MSU Extension plays in communicating the great work you do and others, getting it out into the countryside, which is so important. You can get farmers telling farmers this works.
Yeah.
That's the key to making a difference.
And I'll tell you that I have a lot of disadvantages. I have an exit. Farmers went beyond the exit. They say,
Uh-huh.
"Hey, this international scientist is really, helping us." So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
uh it's a good story there.
Yeah, no, and they appreciate why you do what you do because you care about them, you care about their businesses. That's what it's all about. That goes a long ways. Yeah, ivory towers in academia don't cut it, but you're very grounded in making sure your work makes a difference.
Because I'm driven by impact. I mean,
Right.
I don't want to sound too pompous, and that's really what drives our research in the
Hmm.
Basso lab.
Hmm.
It's having impact and help community as well as the university to basically get the recognitions through the investments that we get, and you know enough of
Hmm.
that, and it's hard to maintaining this talented group of people requires investments, and they're not easy to get them. Unfortunately, they're going down in agriculture and they're being
Hmm.
calls for it. This is really for the future of basically the human be able to continue to feed people,
Sure. Sure.
as well as maintaining integrity of the natural resources. That's basically the agenda of everybody. And so we still struggle understanding why some agriculture. I think one of the reasons, George, is really maybe we have done too well over the years. This, but you know that now there are world record yields of corn
Hmm.
at 600 bushels.
Hmm.
And I visited these fields. I visited
Hmm.
farms that they had that, and so it's pretty amazing to know the advancement in genetics, which Michigan State does an
Hmm.
incredible job, linked to this precision agriculture,
Hmm.
where to place the seeds and all that. That has really made them, reach some level of goals and yields that were almost
Hmm.
undreamable before. But and again, impact is key for us.
Yeah, and we could have a whole nother conversation on this topic, but we talk about the role that farmers play, and feeding the world is certainly first and foremost, but agriculture can play an important role in terms of what we call the bioeconomy, and whether we're talking about ethanol used as a vehicle, the future and sustainable aviation fuel and things like that. More markets for our farmers. Yields are going up and up and up. Alt Additional uses for agriculture commodities are really the key to the future and can help make the world at a better place at a whole nother level beyond the important role of food security.
Indeed, well said.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Bruno, it's been a great conversation. As we kind of wrap up, I want you to think into your crystal ball and give us your ideas of 10 to 20 years from now, where you think we can be, what the potential is in terms of your work, regenerative agriculture, how agriculture might change, and what we can look forward to, and what the landscape holds in terms of even bigger impact in the future.
So I guess I want to give you two type of answers.
Uh-huh.
One where you could imagine, and I'm not necessarily um, going to wish for that small, incremental, continue
Uh-huh.
to see things improve, and that's easy to think in that way. I like to see transformation, right?
Right.
I like to see 20 years and kind of dream. But I'll tell you what, there is one piece that plays a critical role, and it's our work at Michigan State,
Mm-hmm.
because you and I have traveled the world, and Michigan State is basically so recognized globally
Mm-hmm.
what we do in helping others that will
Mm-hmm.
continue to have that role, for the future. So the Center for Regenerative Ag will continue to be a critical hub, but the breakthrough, I feel, it is going to be driven by technologies.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said at one of the first sentences, we got to be careful on how we use technologies, because
Mm-hmm.
if you use it wrong, you may legitimize a wrongdoing. If you
Right.
help someone making a wrong decision more efficiently,
Mm-hmm.
the worst it could happen. If you want to I tell you how to irrigate in the desert in an efficient way, I'm not supportive of that. You shouldn't be growing that type of approach. Now, generalizing it. So the transformation basically will come with possibility of having, we're already working towards that, linking these complex systems into AI based,
Mm-hmm.
where there will be basically communication and easy access. So the level of accessing information will become seamless for farmers.
Mm-hmm.
Technologies available on the farm, whether that we can have another podcast on that, how
Mm-hmm.
technology will possibly increase inequalities. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
you got to face that, and we
Right.
got to work towards that, because we'll displace some of the labors. People don't understand how much complexity there is in getting labor to work in
Yeah. Oh,
agriculture.
yeah.
And so be able to have technologies that would make basically the implementation of practices easier. We already have drones displaying fertilizer that will come and recharge. They could almost be, the farmers, imagine the farmers sitting in someplace else and having fleets of basically robotics, drones,
Mm-hmm.
auto steering machines
Mm-hmm.
that basically understand the individual plants. We will have, this is not far down the road. In the
Right.
next few years, we'll have satellites that will measure the same area twice with hyperspectral information at sub-inch information. We will have basically genetic CRISPR, this
Mm-hmm.
magic scissors connecting genes, not without even coming on the transgenic. Um,
Right.
so in two things, I will see genetics, digital technologies coming together. The farmers will play still a critical role, because it will basically have to be present on the land to continue to basically maintain this land. We can't afford to see this profession disappear, and they need help. Unfortunately, the number is reducing. And I think there will be also new markets, possibility of changing the food system. Not necessarily, it's important to understand that we're gifted with the Midwest in terms of the way, the distribution of rain, even though
Mm-hmm.
it's drastically changing, but we got models that understand all that. You can't expect to grow veggie, in some places where the neighbor, it's 100 miles. And so you got to stay within the large crops in some places and
Mm-hmm.
smaller crop in other places. And you say this a lot more than me. Michigan, as California with water, will play a significant amount of role
Mm-hmm.
in seeing this futuristic look. But science, technology, innovation, and I want to say another word which is critical: education.
Right.
Education, outreach, and extension are
Right.
critical. Taking these tools, training. I work on negative times. I can't necessarily go. I prioritize the conversation with farmers, but you got to put these tools, train the trainer, and we
Mm-hmm.
do a great job in
Mm-hmm.
that. So I think that's a little bit of the vision, the futuristic vision of, new tools coming seamless in helping farmers make decisions that will help them produce while protecting environment. So the environmental sustainability will continue to play a critical role because consumer demand more transparency. Companies are understanding that, and we need to do that to be able to continue to farm. And regenerative
Mhm.
agriculture, by building soil health and training farmers to become really even more professionals at what they do because of the complexity of spatial variation and uncertainties with weather. We want them to understand the risk and make decisions based on the level of risk, as you would do in investing in finance.
Oh, well put, Bruno. It's so exciting to think about what the future holds. Lots of challenges, but it's people like you and other members of the dream team at MSU working in regenerative agriculture, Jason Roundtree, a leader in the livestock space, Emily Silver, we're incorporating agroforestry, Ian Olson, who has a strong background and connection to the supply chain. And if we had more time, we could talk about a whole host of other topics like the important role that research plays in informing policy. We could talk about the really critical role that regenerative agriculture can play in building resilience to extreme weather, which we know that's becoming a greater and greater challenge. But unfortunately, we got to wrap things up. So great conversation. I really appreciate your time. Any final words you want to share with us?
Well, again, I am extremely privileged to be a faculty at Michigan State. I work hard to maintain this talented group of students and postdocs and employees that I have in the lab. Without the financial support and that passion, I try to transmit the vision and the mission that we share, and they embrace it, and that goes a long way. So transmitting, making the job the the thing that you really can't wait to wake up in the morning. It's key to motivate the students, create a
Mhm.
school that will continue. And that we talked about that so much about making informed decision. It's happening already at policy. We help
Right,
shape policy and
right,
understand the complexity of the natural systems
right.
and by climate. So thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Thanks for all the things that you do for
Uh-huh.
the lab. And again, thanks very much indeed.
Well, great conversation. Thank you, Bruno, and we'll have to do this again sometime.
Would love to.